Welcome to the Blackhawks Breakaway Podcast, brought to you by Toyota. Toyota has more all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand. Find yours and shine on. Toyota, let's go places. With Charlie Roumeliotis, I am Pat Boyle. The flu bug has infiltrated the Blackhawks dressing room the last week plus, and it's taken no prisoners, or all prisoners. I don't know how you want to phrase it, but it's really had an impact on this team.
Yeah, and just when you think the Blackhawks are over it, one other guy falls. Like today, we just got back from practice on Wednesday afternoon, and Sam Lafferty is the latest victim. And we found out that yesterday the Rockford Ice Hogs had a game, and both Drew Commesso and Stan Bereznoy were out of the lineup because they got hit with the stomach bug. So a quick trip to the NHL, they get sent back down. But Friday's game against the Washington Capitals, and then obviously the ensuing game on Saturday, was one of the craziest days that I've covered with the Blackhawks, because we get to morning skate on Friday, and I don't see a few guys. I didn't see Foligno. I didn't see Mikheyev. I didn't see Arvid Soderblom. And then I thought, okay, must be an optional morning skate. But then I'm like, that sounds silly because they were off on Thursday. So why would they have an optional coming off an off day? Well, then I didn't see Blackhawks head coach Jeff Blashill on the ice. And so we get word that Jeff was sick. Mike Vellucci does the pregame media availability. We get word that some of the guys are dealing with the stomach bug. Then fast forward, we get to the rink, and word trickles to us that both Spencer Knight and Louis Crevier have also come down with this. So the Hawks made call-ups earlier in the day, Drew Commesso and Kevin Korchinski, thinking that they just needed Commesso to be the backup and Korchinski to just be on standby in case somebody else fell. They get thrown into the lineup. And then how about the bounce back from Drew Commesso on Saturday, getting the shutout? Just one of the crazier weekends that I can remember in Blackhawks land. And all it's because of this stomach virus.
Yeah. And it also affected the broadcast group as well. It affected me. I missed my first game in 7 years on Friday night. So, but you talk about Commesso. Let's start with that crazy weekend for him. He thinks he's going to be playing for Rockford on Friday, participates in the morning skate. The Blackhawks are asking Spencer Knight if he's able to go. Spencer Knight is responding to those questions by going into the bathroom and violently spilling his cookies, so to speak, losing his lunch, whatever you want to say. And so it took Commesso completely out of his game day routine. He travels to Chicago, and it felt like that. It felt kind of like a disjointed, game, not only for him, but for the Hawks on that Friday night against Washington. But just when we thought we could figure out what type of effort we would get from a team, or when they might click or respond in a certain way, I didn't see the Nashville 3-0 shutout coming, with Commesso getting his first NHL win via a shutout.
Yeah, and I'm sure that was a nervy game going in for the Blackhawks, because so many of the guys dropped from the lineup because of the illness on Friday. Well, then they all got to get on a charter together and figure out who might come down with this illness before Saturday's game. And it's not like it was a home game where they can just call some bodies up from Rockford if they find out the day of that some guys can't go. Like, there were some guys on standby potentially needing to take a flight to Nashville, like out of O'Hare Airport, just to make sure that the Hawks had enough bodies. And so you kind of chalk that up. Second of a back-to-back, the second straight start for Drew Commesso. And so you're like, okay, this is obviously difficult circumstances, but what a response by Drew in that game. And the way I phrased it on the broadcast is, it's like, what does a golfer do when they bogey or double bogey a hole? Like, what do they do on the next hole? Like, that's how you can tell about a player. And for Drew Commesso to respond in the way that he did from Friday's game against Washington with a 36 save shutout, I think his goals saved above expected was like 4.32. I mean, it was incredible. And so I thought it was cool too. the Blackhawks had the behind the scenes footage of Drew Commesso. I think he did the TV interview with Darren and Rick afterwards. And so they're waiting for Drew to come back into the locker room, and they all give him the silent treatment for the first few seconds before just piling on and dumping water on him. I think those guys were just as excited for Drew as he was.
Yeah. And then on Monday, we're all getting ready for Connor McDavid versus Connor Bedard, part 6. We go to the morning skate. Bedard is there answering questions about the win on Saturday. And we come back to the rink in the late afternoon, getting ready for, a 7:30 puck drop. And word is passed around that Bedard has not arrived yet. And it looks like he was stricken with the flu. And so he was the latest casualty. It's been a sickness. I have not seen one hit a team this hard that I've covered, maybe ever. And it's kind of gone in waves. Hopefully Sam Lafferty is the last. It seemingly has hit just about everybody in that room.
Yeah, the only thing I can compare it to is when there was the COVID year, when one player would have COVID and then a few other guys would get it. But during that season, there was a taxi squad. So those taxi squad members would just jump into the lineup, or the NHL would just reschedule those games later on. But for it just to be like a normal, stomach virus, like I can't remember the last time that I've seen this in a sports team. And actually, I should say the Chicago Bears actually might have dealt something similar, I think, a couple weeks ago. I don't know if it was the stomach virus, but they had like 12 guys on the injury report. But anyway, we just talked to Connor Bedard. We were asking him to explain like what happened on Monday. And I guess he woke up, started feeling a little bit of symptoms, went back to bed for about 20 or 30 minutes, goes to morning skate. He said he felt fine. And then after morning skate, it really started to hit him. And he was kind of half joking, like, man, I wish I would have gotten those symptoms earlier in the day so that I can be good enough to play in the game, because I was told that this is the first game at any level that Connor Bedard has missed because of an illness. Like that's how much it would take out a guy like Connor Bedard from the lineup, especially going up against Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. Those competitive superstars like playing each other. So for him not to play in that game goes to tell you how significant this virus was.
And they missed him in that game. I really think that 98 would have been a difference, a stabilizing force, certainly in that first period when they were getting extremely outplayed, would have helped on the power play as well. I want to talk about what happened on Saturday night. We had the unique situation where the Blackhawks, the Bulls, and of course the Bears were all playing at the same time, all 3 games starting within 5 minutes of each other. Of course, the Bears being the biggest one with their wild card matchup on the lakefront against their hated rival from Green Bay. So the Blackhawks game finishes in enough time where the guys had about the final 6 minutes of the Bears game. They were able to watch on their phones on the bus as they were traveling from Bridgestone Arena to the Nashville airport. And it just got me thinking about, I love playoff runs in a town. I love how it galvanizes the city, and it takes, the diehard fan and mixes them with the casual fan. And it mixes them also with I don't even care about football, but I'll jump on board because it's something that doesn't come along very often. We saw that in 2010 through 15, how those 3 cup-winning teams brought a city together, brought people that had never watched a hockey game, brought them to this sport. And it made me think of like how cool it is too to see other athletes in this town embrace the energy and maybe try to guess what it would be like someday if they're in the Bears' shoes making a playoff run. So I think there's some cool moments that can be taken away from a playoff run by a team in Chicago, and it doesn't necessarily need to be that team that learns all the lessons. It can be the Blackhawks watching what the Bears are doing and kind of riding that energy, riding that wave, so to speak.
Yeah, it really does remind me of the time when the entire city rallied around the Blackhawks for those 6, 7, 8 years when the Hawks were in the prime of their dynasty era, and you had other members of the Bears, the Bulls, the Cubs, the White Sox that were at the United Center. Like Michael Jordan made an appearance at the Blackhawks game when the Hawks were winning Stanley Cups, because like that's how significant the talk was and the buzz was in the city. And so now we know that this city is primarily a Bears town, and for the entire city to kind of just rally around gets the juices flowing for when maybe both the Blackhawks and the Bears and, you know, the Cubs and all these other sports teams in the market are winning at the same time. I mean, there truly is not a better sports city in America than Chicago when all 5 of the teams are winning. And so that was one of the more unique days of my career, because all of those teams were playing each other, and it was like I had one eye on the Blackhawks game, but I also had one eye on the Bears game, and the Bears comeback was happening like in the middle of my post-game show, and I was able to sign off like right when there was like a minute and a half left in the Bears game. So I was able to watch the finish. And it's actually funny, Pat, because I had a group chat going with some friends, and around 9:30, one of the guys, we had kind of accepted that the Bears were just like on pace to lose. They were just going to lose. And so one of my friends texted, "Man, we could really go for some good Cubs news tomorrow." And 2 minutes later, Pat, we get the tweet from Jeff Passan that Alex Bregman signed a 5-year mega deal with the Cubs. And so it was such a memorable, like, that's one of those nights where we're all going to remember where we were for that.
So the other thing that has been a part of this interesting run by the Bears this year is Ben Johnson, first-year coach, obviously changing a culture, doing something that, hasn't been done in this town forever. And that is, take an offense and take it to an elite level as a play caller. And I have seen some similarities between Ben Johnson and Jeff Blashill. But when we spoke to Blashill on Monday, like, he sees some similarities. Their paths crossed in Detroit when Ben was on Dan Campbell's staff. And of course, Blashill was the head coach of the Red Wings. It continued at the beginning of this season. Before the Blackhawks season started, Blashill made the rounds, went to Wrigley. I think he went to Guaranteed Rate as well, but went to Hallis Hall and watched a Bears practice and got to talk to Blashill, or talk to Ben Johnson. And, I when I listen to their press conferences, I see some similarities. And it's kind of it's a newer approach. It's a very direct. It's not a lot of coach speak. It's not a lot of mumbo jumbo. It will critique a player and not do it in a defaming way, or in a way that makes you feel itchy and scratchy. And talking to Blashill on Monday, he said, like, yeah, I think we're both process driven, and that, there are things that he can learn. How the Bears have stayed in games when they were down on the scoreboard. It's a lesson that all teams and all players and coaches can learn from. So it's, there's some interesting subplots to this whole Bears run, but I've been intrigued by trying to connect the dots between the Hawks and the Bears, and what can be learned from one sport to another.
Yeah, for sure. And I would argue that Jeff Blashill has made just as big of an impact on this Blackhawks team than Ben Johnson has with the Bears. Now, it might not reflect standings wise, where you have the Bears as Super Bowl contenders and the Blackhawks still kind of in the middle of their rebuild. But prior to Connor Bedard going down with the right shoulder injury, the Hawks were like very much in the thick of the playoff race, and nobody really expected them to even be in the conversation, let alone like above the playoff line. And so I think we've seen the immediate impact that Jeff Blashill has had on this Blackhawks roster. But because he's so process driven, and because hockey is different than football, where the Bears roster was kind of ready to compete right away, and they just kind of needed the right coach to elevate the group to make them contenders. Whereas the Blackhawks needed the right next coach to transition them to the next phase of the rebuild. And he almost transitioned them into like borderline playoff contenders right away. And so it's been cool to see the little bit of parallels on a micro level for Blashill and the Blackhawks, but it's cool that they're able to connect in some way, because even when, I mean, we've seen this twice when Kyle Davidson got hired as the general manager, he picked the brain of Ryan Poles, and then they started having a connection as two first-time GMs in a big market like this. And then when Caleb Williams and Connor Bedard were both the number one overall picks, they ended up exchanging numbers and keeping in touch. So it's always cool when these coaches, players, management groups of the city can lean on each other to help make each organization better.
And I think the last time we saw Caleb Williams use social media to give a shout out to Connor Bedard, I think it was after the hat trick against Calgary.
Yeah, I think you might have been right.
And so it all comes full circle as they host Calgary on Thursday. Let's get into the Bedard situation. So he's back to practice. He's playing center, but he's not taking face-offs while he comes back from that shoulder injury. So it'll be Ryan Green taking the face-offs. It'll be Burakovsky on the right wing. And that Blashill said that took a little getting used to, you know, when you're not taking the face-offs, sometimes you assume the role of of a winger, and it took maybe game one and a little bit of game two to kind of get used to. He's like, no, I want you being the center with the center responsibilities. The only thing you're not doing is taking face-off.
Right. Well, even the Washington game when he returned in the first period, he played on a line with Oliver Moore and Nick Lardis, but he was pushed on the wing. And so they're like, all right, we like Moore at center. We like the Moore and Lardis combo, but they wanted to ease Connor Bedard back in, not just ease him back in by playing the wing, but that first line with Bertuzzi, Green, and Burakovsky were just excellent together. So Blashill didn't want to touch that trio. And so he's like, all right, we'll put Bedard on the wing to start. But it lasted only one period because it was a difficult first period for the Blackhawks. They fall behind 3-0 to the Capitals. And then in the second period is where they're like, let's put Connor Bedard back at his normal center position. We'll move Ryan Green to the wing because that duo has been really good together. And then the constant on Connor Bedard's line all season long has been André Burakovsky. And so we've seen that trio together, but it's Ryan Green taking the faceoffs. We actually asked Connor this today about, is there a timeline for him to start taking faceoffs again? And it didn't seem like there was. Like I imagine it's something they're going to revisit after the Olympic break, and it's not something that they're really going to be rushing to do prior to it. But it kind of works out because you have Bedard playing his normal center position, and I don't know how many starts that they would have that start as a faceoff, because most of the time they're just on the fly. You hop over the boards and you can just go immediately to the center position. But just on the occasion when there is an offensive zone draw, it's going to be Ryan Green taking the faceoffs.
We've given André Burakovsky enough credit for what he has brought to Connor Bedard's game. Like, he's brought stability to Connor's line. And look, there's been other players, you know, throughout this season that have played well with Connor. But Burakovsky, whether it's his zone entries, whether it's slowing the game down, playing fast when he needs to, it's a full complement. And it also starts with a 200-foot game. And I really think Bedard appreciates what Burakovsky has brought to this team.
Yeah, no question. I've been pleasantly surprised with Burakovsky this season. And again, it's a testament to Kyle Davidson literally getting him for free, like in a
Yeah.
1-for-1 trade for Joe Veleno, who's not even on the Seattle Kraken roster anymore. And so with Burakovsky, I know the injuries had plagued him over the last couple years, and so he wasn't quite like himself. But when you think of him as a player, he's really big, and you kind of think, oh, he's a complementary piece on a line, but he's beyond a complementary piece. Like, he's a guy that can drive a line. Like, when Connor Bedard was out, and that first line was Ryan Green, Burakovsky, and Tyler Bertuzzi, Burakovsky had to become the driver of the line, and he eventually was. And his feet move so quickly for a guy of his size, and so he's so fast. He's a puck transporter. You mentioned that the entries is something that he's really underrated and doesn't get enough credit for that aspect of his game. But yeah, and he thinks the game at a very high level. Like, I think that's why he works well with Tyler Bertuzzi and he works well with Connor Bedard. Now, they're obviously, all three of those guys are different players stylistically, but they know where each other is going to be, that when they do find themselves together, it's really beautiful to watch. And so I've noticed with Burakovsky, he's just a really, really good player.
I'm really surprised that he's not in the mix for Team Sweden for the Olympics. And I talked to him a little bit about it last week, and he almost made it sound like there is no communication. I don't know if there's a rift with that coach. I know Anders Sorensen is on that staff as an assistant, but it seems to me, with the hardware that he has accumulated, and with the talent that he's played with, both in Colorado, Washington, and now here in Chicago, and putting up good numbers. I know in Seattle it didn't work out, but I'm kind of surprised he's not in the mix for Team Sweden.
Yeah, and I imagine Sorensen was probably banging his fist on the table for Burakovsky because of how important he's been to this Blackhawks roster. But I haven't really dove too deep into Team Sweden's roster and maybe see like who could be taken out for him. But I wonder if he is on standby as a potential injury replacement, because I don't know how he wouldn't be on Team Sweden's radar given the season that he's had, and he's healthy. It's not like he's powering through an injury like he was the last couple years. Like, he has totally been healthy, and his on-ice play proves it.
Let's stay with the Olympic theme a little bit. Brayden Point went down on Monday night. He is week to week with a lower body. I think it's a right leg, right?
Yeah, it's got to be leg, knee, something in that area.
And his status is up in the air. So he's day to day, but Cooper said more like week to week. So that makes you look at Team Canada and wonder, okay, does that open a spot possibly for Connor Bedard? What are your thoughts? We already heard Team Canada say that, they're going to replace the specific player with a player that meets the characteristics of the player that's leaving the lineup. So if it's a top six center, you're going to replace him with a top six center. If it's somebody who plays with McDavid, the person that we're replacing him with has to complement McDavid's game. Your thoughts on how Bedard might be a possible replacement for Brayden Point if Point doesn't recover in time?
Yeah, well, first off, I feel terrible about this injury for Brayden Point because I think the last time we talked about this was a couple weeks ago, and we mentioned Brayden Point. We kind of referenced Brayden Point as an example of someone, if he gets hurt, he's kind of in that in-between guy where you can play him in the top six, but he can also play a bottom six role, and so it really depends on how Team Canada is going to utilize him. Pierre LeBrun of The Athletic wrote a story yesterday. He had a source tell him that the early plan was for Brayden Point to start on a line with Connor McDavid. And if that's the case, that tells me that Team Canada was penciling him in for a top six role, to be more offensive, to be maybe the defensively responsible one on that line, and then they can let the others, whoever the other winger was going to be on McDavid's line, maybe play more offensive. So if that's the case, Team Canada has options here. Like, do you replace Brayden Point with a guy that has a high offensive ceiling like a Connor Bedard? Do you replace him with stylistically the best player, which might be Wyatt Johnston? Do you use that injury as an opportunity to put Sam Bennett back into the equation, because he was kind of the one guy that felt like the snub that was on the Four Nations roster? And so it's going to be really interesting to see which direction Team Canada takes this if Brayden Point is in fact out. And I kind of feel like he is trending towards missing the Olympics, because the update that we got from John Cooper was he avoided the worst case scenario. He's not out for the season, but he is week to week. So, I mean, if you're kind of eliminating that he's not out for the season, that still tells me that he's going to be out for a fairly extended, potentially an extended period of time. But there's really no runway for Brayden Point to get up to speed. So even if he is ready to go by game one of the Olympics, he's going to miss 3 weeks, and you don't know what his conditioning is and all that. So it's going to be a fascinating conversation. We do know that Connor Bedard has confirmed that he is one of the guys that have been on injury standby, but this is an interesting conversation, because I think if you're looking at Team Canada's roster too, the penalty kill is going to be Cirelli and Hagel. And then you have Tom Wilson there as well. He kills penalties. You have other players that can kill penalties. So Brayden Point isn't a player that I think Team Canada was going to lean heavily on in the penalty kill. So it's going to be very interesting to see which direction that they take this in.
I wonder how Connor Bedard not taking draws right now impacts his status among Team Canada when they're talking about it. You know, that's where it's good that Blashill and Cooper are tight, and behind the scenes they can have conversations about why they're going this route and what the timeline is for him to start taking draws. But that is something to consider. Hypothetically, and I think they would take this as close to February as possible, unless they knew for sure that he was not going to be available throughout the 3 weeks of the Olympics. Bedard coming back and not taking draws is something to factor into this equation.
Yeah, because Connor McDavid, he's not the best at the faceoff circle in his career, and usually when he plays on a line with Leon Draisaitl takes a majority of the faceoffs. So if Team Canada was hoping to pair McDavid with Brayden Point so that Point can be more of the guy to take the faceoffs, and then they kind of go to their natural positions, then that's definitely going to be a part of the equation that Team Canada wrestles with. But if we're just going player, like who would they replace Brayden Point with? Boy, oh boy, that's going to be, again, that would be difficult for me if I was running Team Canada to not use that opportunity to bring in a guy like Connor Bedard and get that extra goal or two if they need it within the tournament.
Teuvo Teravainen is going to be out for the Calgary game with an upper body injury, and his status for the weekend is to be determined day to day. Special teams has been fantastic. Let's give some love to the penalty kill. Michael Pekka runs the PK, an aggressive system that they have implemented. To the casual fan or the novice Hawks fan, how would you describe the PK system that they employ?
Yeah, it's a really aggressive system, and they do a really good job in the neutral zone being aggressive and denying zone entries, but even in the offensive zone, or when the power play is in the offensive zone and the penalty kill is defending the power play. Like, something that I noticed in training camp is they really wanted to try the defenseman. They wanted the defenseman to be aggressive in jumping up near the face-off circle to maybe just defend and make sure that those wingers aren't getting opportunities to kind of set up. And so I've seen the aggression there. And this isn't one of those things where the Blackhawks have gotten hot and then they've gotten cold, and then the median is like, oh, they're 7th in the NHL. Like what are they, third in the NHL and PK percentage? They're right up there, and they've stayed up there all year long. It's been so consistent in the way they perform. And think about some of the guys that have come and gone. Dickinson's been hurt. Mikheyev missed a couple games he missed a game with the illness, missed a game with the illness. Then he missed a couple games because of his newborn was born. And then like Frank Nazar was on the penalty kill. Teuvo Teravainen, he's on the penalty kill. If they're not going to have him next game, like there have been so many moving parts, and the Hawks just seemingly don't skip a beat. And so it's not like the Hawks are just leaning on really spectacular goaltending from Spencer Knight and Arvid Soderboom. They are very well structured defensively, and it's rare to see that immediate impact on a consistent basis when you're implementing a new system right away.
Yeah, and the consistency has also been happening at the beginning of the year when they were taking a lot more penalties. Up until like 2 weeks ago, they had taken the 4th most penalties in the National Hockey League. The last 2 weeks, it's been more of the 1 a game, 2 a game variety. And, and they're making the most of those penalty kill opportunities. But they've done a better job of being disciplined and not putting themselves on the PK as much as they did at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, that's a good point. There was a 3-game stretch recently where the Hawks had just 1 minor penalty in each of the 3 games, and they went 1 for 1, 1 for 1, 1 for 1. And it was like, that's exactly what you need. Especially, I think that stretch came when Connor Bedard was not in the lineup. So it was even more important to not give the opposition extra offensive power play opportunities. And even the Edmonton game, like they held the Oilers to 0 shots on goal in their 2 power play opportunities. I mean, that is the most lethal power play in the entire NHL. And they did not they did not hit 1 puck to the net on the power play. So it's just been so spectacular. And even the power play has surprisingly been good when they started to find a rhythm without Connor Bedard. Like you take away Bedard and you take away Frank Nazar, like that's gotta leave you up at night as a coach if you're Mike Vellucci trying to run the power play scheme. And it just seems like they haven't skipped a beat to the point now where they feel comfortable with 2 units right now, where if one is going, they'll start the second unit out there.
Yeah. And Tyler Bertuzzi getting it done on the power play, getting it done 5-on-5. He has been nothing short of amazing this year. I did not expect this at all. Last year said, he had the 21 goals or whatever. He ended up 23. I think he had 23 last year, but it seemed like they came in two stretches of really hot streaks. This year, it's been 40 plus games of hot streaks. He's been leading the league in high danger goals. He scores. He does a great job of reading and maneuvering around the cage and kind of settling in on that back post, no matter where the puck is on the ice, and kind of slithers in and it comes in and disguises himself a little bit. Doesn't always set up in the same spot, and he's just been. It seems like an easy job to do. It really is. You got to pay a price to do it, and to be really successful at it. The technique that he uses to use his body as a backboard and to turn and present himself, and then get that body, get that stick, get that skate on the puck to the back of the net. It's a thing of beauty when it's working like this.
Yeah, he's one of those guys. Historically, he can be a streaky player where he goes some stretches where he's not producing offensively, and then there are a few weeks where he's like, holy cow, he is just red hot. It feels like he has been red hot all season outside of a 6-game stretch where he had 0 points, and all 6 of those games were this first 6 games that Connor Bedard missed the time in the lineup with the shoulder injury. So it was like he was trying to figure out, all right, I don't have my guy setting me up on the power play. I don't have a guy that he plays occasionally with at even strength. And coming out of the holiday break, he's just been sensational. And there's something about when there's a trust factor between a coach and a player. Like Bertuzzi's best years in the pros have come with Jeff Blashill as his head coach, whether he won the Calder Cup in the AHL together, whether he scored a career high 30 goals with the Red Wings with Blashill as the head coach. And then now he's got 24 goals. I mean, he's 6 away from matching his career high already. And it's January 14th. I mean, we still got 3 more months to go. And he's currently on a pace of a 44 goal pace. I mean, that's just a sensational season. And I think one of the reasons why he's been so good this year is he's obviously not the fleetest of foot. Like he takes a while to get to his spots, but when he is in those spots, I mean, he's just so annoying to play against. And even the defenders on the power play, they know that he's going to post up on that post and go down to his one knee, and he still finds a way to either park himself there and kind of take the beating, or he's such a smart player where he'll go find some soft ice and he'll get to that moment the second he needs to go to that moment. Like he's just such a great player to watch.
The timing aspect of it is really incredible. And you tend to see it on the replays of how he kind of is lurking and then decides when he's going to get to that back post. And it almost syncs up perfectly with the shot attempt or the pass.
Yeah. And this is why you see one of the traits that the Blackhawks have prioritized in recent drafts obviously are speed, right? But they want guys to think the game at a high level, because you can have all the skill in the world, but if you're playing on the power play with Connor Bedard and some superstar players that they need to depend on you to be in certain places. This is why Bertuzzi is excellent in that power play role. And when he does play with a guy like Connor Bedard, is because while, again, they are 2 totally different players, Bertuzzi thinks the game at such a high level that he knows where to be. He knows where Connor needs him to be, and he knows when Connor is going to get him the puck. Like there isn't a play that Connor can't make that he knows. Like Bertuzzi just seems like a guy, like he's always ready for the puck. Right. He's never surprised. And right. So that's just a guy that he thinks the game at such a high level. And it's why he's just been on an absolute tear from start to finish this year.
All right. We got a cool sports weekend in the city of Chicago. Sunday evening, of course, the Bears are hosting the LA Rams. I think it's a 5:30-ish start. Nice that the Hawks aren't going up against it. But we bookending or the sandwich to the Bears game, it starts on Saturday night with the Centennial celebration of the Cup-winning teams. And we're going to have, 25-plus Cup-winning alumni in attendance, including Seabrook, Hossa, Sharp, Crawford. So on Saturday night against the Bruins, there's going to be a lot of pregame festivities in the atrium. There's going to be a spectacular pregame ceremony hosted by Pat Foley. I know on our pregame show, we're going to have some alumni stop by. I think with that Bears game on Sunday night, I wouldn't be surprised if they're working their connection, some of those guys, to make sure that they're in a nice box or a suite at Soldier Field for that. And then on Monday, the cherry on top, it's the captain, Jonathan Toews, playing his first game back here at the United Center with the Winnipeg Jets, and he comes in on a heater as we tape this podcast.
Yeah, he is on a 3-game goal streak after going, Pat, I think he went 20-plus games without finding the back of the net, so he's feeling himself. So that should be a great atmosphere. But our podcast producer, Saul, and I were talking offline. He was looking for tickets for Saturday's Blackhawks game, and he was confused as to why the tickets were very expensive. And I was like, there are going to be about 25 cup winners in the building. So that's probably why. And so it should be a fantastic crowd on Saturday, leading into the Sunday Bears game, then leading into the Jonathan Toews return on Monday. And it's, thank God, Pat, the Bears game is on Sunday, because I feel like the Hawks would have had to flex out of their Saturday night spot, maybe push it to an afternoon game to make sure that the Hawks and Bears weren't competing up against each other, because those are two very important games, obviously, for the organization. And how about, I can't remember if we mentioned this on the last podcast, but another significant moment that Chicago fans I know care about is Patrick Kane getting his 500th career NHL goal with the Detroit Red Wings, which I thought was a really cool moment. I don't know if you were able to see his behind the scenes, his speech that he made to the Detroit Red Wings locker room. That was fantastic. The first time. It was absolutely fantastic. But that was the first time that I saw Kane get choked up and a little bit emotional when he was talking about the doubt that he had about whether or not he was going to play after having the hip resurfacing surgery, because no other NHL player that had done that surgery has really come back from that and been an effective player. And so I look at Patrick Kane as like this confident guy, like, oh, he probably knew that he was going to come back and be the same player. And so it was cool to see him get that milestone moment. And then obviously leading into, Toews is coming to town on Monday. Just a lot going on in the Chicago sports land.
I love how he finished that conversation. It was about him and that milestone. And he did bust Dylan Larkin's stones a little bit there too, as only Patrick can. But he brought it full circle at the end and said, we've got unfinished business to do, and they've been among the division leaders most of the season thus far, and have been finding ways to pile up the points. So we will see what happens. It doesn't look like he will be a part of Team USA. We were holding out hope that he might be, an alternate or something like that. But you never say never, but it doesn't appear like that's in the cards for Kane.
Yeah, and it is unfortunate because you do want to see him rep the Team USA sweater just one more time. And I think you did an interview with NHL.com recently saying that the Olympic gold medal is really the one thing that he hasn't gotten in his career, and I'm sure would have loved that opportunity. But he won't get that chance, unfortunately. But I do hope we get to see playoff Patty Kane this year, because they're on a nice run right now, and the Eastern Conference is so wide open that they could theoretically, I mean, I know you don't think of them as like a legit Stanley Cup contender, but there are so many teams outside of the playoff picture in the Eastern Conference right now that there's really not one team that scares you outside of maybe the Tampa Bay Lightning because of the heater that they're on and the playoff experiments that
it's got an NFL feel to it, right? Wide open NFL playoff field. It feels like this, certainly in the East, it's going to be pretty wide open. You get in the dance, you got an opportunity to represent that side of the bracket. As we wrap things up, only parting shot that I had that jumps off the page, Anton Frondell returns to Sweden and continues to put up points, had a nice goal in his first game back. And Frank Saravalli was on our pregame show, and he says, barring a lengthy run by his Swedish team in the playoffs, he expects Anton Frondell to be in Chicago at the end of this regular season.
Yeah, and that has to get fans excited given what he did at the World Juniors, but also it's hard to compare the production in the Swedish Hockey League, because the Swedish Hockey League is essentially a league that prioritizes the veterans' ice time more than merit-based performance. And so the World Juniors was an opportunity to see, all right, where does Frondell line up against his other peers? And boy, he's right up there, like with some of the. I mean, he was named the best forward of the tournament, and so that's certainly encouraging. And so we're likely going to see a similar situation play out that we did last year when Sam Renzel and Oliver Moore, when their seasons ended, they turned pro were able to get some games in, which is encouraging. And then one of the prospects that I highlighted, which is a name that Chicago fans are following closely as well, is Roman Kanserov. And I dug into some of the numbers too. I don't know when his KHL season is going to end and whether there's an opportunity for him to make the jump as early as this year too. But he missed I think it was a game over the weekend with an illness. Go figure, and ends up hitting Kanserov in Russia as well. But he ended up adding 2 assists. He had 5 shots on goal. He won 10 of 16 faceoffs in the game that I was watching. But he's up to 49 points this year. But specifically, he has 27 goals, which leads the KHL. He's on pace for 43 goals. So for context, the KHL record for most goals in a season is 49. Like, he is 6 goals away from potentially matching a KHL record. Wow. And also for extra context, Kirill Kaprizov at 21 years old, which is Kanserov is at 21 right now, in that same league, he scored only 30 goals. So Kanserov is already at 27. So he's 3 away from matching Kaprizov. And I think Kaprizov ended up playing 1 more year in the KHL at 22 years old. And in that year, he scored 37. So like, Kanserov is on pace to shatter both of what Kaprizov did in the KHL. I mean, that's got to get you excited too if you're a Blackhawks fan.
Oh, there's so much excitement with the prospects and the way they're performing at the various levels that they're at right now. Can't wait to see them in Chicago at the United Center. That's going to do it for this edition of the Blackhawks Breakaway Podcast for CHSN. For Charlie Roumeliotis, I'm Pat Boyle. Thank you for watching and listening, and we will see you next time.